Hello and welcome back in 2019. So today's episode, I'll share 3 very easy ways how you can get started with coaching your team members in 2019. Let's get started.
This is the Coaching Leader Podcast, a resource for modern, busy people leaders like you who know that just directing people simply does not work in the long run. We provide focused skill practice and the relevant thinking models, so you will ask better questions and make your team shine. Freshly served to you by IntelliCoach.org from hot and spicy Singapore.
Hello everyone, welcome back in 2019. So this is Mike. I'd love to welcome you all back into this new year. I'm sure there's a lot on your plate. So I've been out for a few weeks, a little bit longer than I wished. But you know the difference between the plans you make and what actually happens. So my original plan to simply continue making a podcast, even during holiday periods, that doesn't really work. It collides head on with family business, and here I am 2 weeks later. So I hope all of you had a wonderful start in the new year, and we all had a bit of time for reflection. The one thing I really learned over the last few years helping people learn new things is that change happens not when we sit in front of a teacher and listen to him or her and say thank you for this great time. No, learning happens when we take a moment to reflect on what we just heard. It is in that moment that things start to settle. And we all need that. And I always feel like reflection is a moment of rest that gives us the ability to actually move forward. It's as strange as it may sound, because we cannot just run marathons all the time, every single day. We'll just burn out. We need moments of rest and reflection. And I think when I think back to some of the times in my work days when I was working in offices, I think I tried really hard to find or to build some time for thinking into my days, which was extremely difficult. And I think most of you will empathize with that. So I've had a very busy work life as all of you, and I think at the very minimum, I tried to give myself some time, some unplugged time to think. And I remember that time in 2015 when I've just experimented a little bit with, on at least a Friday afternoon, leaving my phone and my laptop at my desk and just moving to the common cafe area and simply sitting down without a pen and paper, without laptop and phone, simply sitting down and seeing where my thoughts will take me. And it's a strange experience because most of us don't do that anymore, because we are naturally busy. We are filling our days with all sorts of activities. And I just sat there, and it's like these toys where, in the little contained space, you have water and these particles that look like snow, and you shake them and all the snow flies and whirls around. But you put that toy on a firm surface and you look at it for a while and it settles. It settles slowly, but eventually a pattern shows and things settle, and you see a beauty emerge in the way that you can actually see clarity in the picture that's probably in that little toy in a display. And that's how it feels every time for me. That's how mindfulness feels for me. It's the busyness, the confusion, the hectic day that simply calms and is being replaced with a little bit of clarity. And I found it really interesting that on a day when I did this, I was sitting down and just thinking actually through some planning for my team and for some business activity. And I was just thinking there. And it's a bit unsettling doing that without your notes, but doing that actually helps you gain clarity on a good level. And I was sitting there thinking, and my peer came by with a coffee that she just bought at a coffee machine there, the coffee vendor. And she looked at me and said, what are you doing? And I looked at her, I'm thinking. And she looked at me puzzled for a moment. Then she turned around and said, yeah, oh, wow, I think I should do that too. I would love to be able to do that. Good on you. And then she walked off. And I can totally understand that. Then we say, I would love to be able to do that because it feels like we don't have the opportunity. But I think we all have a bit of space in our lives. And it's actually a necessity. Because when we create that time to reflect and slow down, we actually move forward faster. We need that time to think. We need to give it to ourselves. We owe it to ourselves. We should all be in control of our own reflection time. Simply saying, I don't have time, yeah, that's an external locus that says I'm not in control, but we all are in control how we think in the moment. So this is one of the things I want to definitely become better in 2019, to become more reflective and to take the active time to reflect. Now, the actual method I haven't yet worked out. I'm working on that. Mindfulness is probably one thing. So I'm working more with the app Calm, and I'm experimenting here. But simply the fact of letting things settle and giving time to reflect is extremely powerful. The thing is, what you and I know, what we intuitively know, is that there are multiple ways of thinking that help us. So very often I've started to just think for a moment or two about the hardest problem I'm facing just before I sleep. And when I wake up, very often I have an idea that just came out of nowhere, some kind of solution. And there's a name for that kind of thing. It's called divergent thinking. It's kind of a thought process or a method where we generate creative ideas by exploring many possible ways. And it is sort of inviting a different way of thinking. We often do this when we walk around aimlessly or we have ideas in the shower. It's these moments of rest where we think we are not productive, but actually we are very productive. Our minds work all the time. And the opposite is what we use most of the time, at least I am definitely, is convergent thinking. And that's simply logical steps to find a solution, but that often leads us at a dead end because our logic doesn't always get us there. So something that I really want to do better in 2019 is to use both modes of thinking in a very deliberate way. And that means spend some time on logical thinking, working hard and producing ideas and outlines, topics, writings, and so forth, and then just taking a step away. And it's really literally taking a step away or multiple steps. I think one of the best things I found is to take a walk. And I've started to take a short run even during the day at midday, and I find it's not a waste of time because it makes me more productive. Running is one of those things where the effect is second order. And that means first order, the effect of running is tiredness and an expense of time. It feels unproductive. But the second order effect is that it actually makes us more productive. It saves us time going forward. And even more further down, the second order effect of sports is, as you know, health. We are sleeping better. We are probably digesting better. Yeah, we are more balanced but we don't see that. We see very often as humans, we see the first order effects. We see the short-term loss, the short-term gain. And to get the point on coaching is a perfect example of a second order effect too. So when you coach as a leader, you're taking away control of a conversation for a moment because you're not telling somebody else what to do in that moment. You are actually leading with curiosity and questions. You're asking someone what their ideas are, what they would do. And that may feel risky in a moment when you only have 5 minutes and you feel like you have to get an agenda across. But in the end, if you get someone else the chance to contribute and to share their thoughts, you will save time. The second order effect of coaching is fantastic. And that's exactly the reason why so many leaders and companies use coaching as a dominant way of interacting. Now, I wanted to use this first podcast in 2019, to lead us in slowly with 3 very brief ways how you can get just started with your coaching habit again in 2019. And coaching is a bit like, going to the gym too. You can't just do it one time. You can't just believe that you're trying coaching one time and you've grown a 6-pack. It doesn't work like this. You have to work on it and use it consistently. And then your people will learn that you are a leader who coaches. And that means you are actually interested in their ideas. And you're not using coaching because someone else told you it's a good way to make your team more productive and squeeze more out of your people. Oh, by the way, that's a term that I really began to hate. And I use that strong word here. Getting more out of your people. Like squeezing them, right? Like a fruit, to dry the fruit of all the juice. And then what do you do with it? With the rest, you just throw it away. That's not how we talk about people. We want to help people be fulfilled and help them to be in a state of mind where they bring forward their best ideas. So what can we do? What are the 3 things? And I made it very simple. One thing that you do before you coach, one thing you do right within the coaching conversation, and one thing after. And what you do before is very simple. Number 1, you actually plan your conversations. And that's a bit strange, isn't it? Planning your conversations. I think we're all very good at planning as leaders. We are planning content, we are planning agendas. But the one thing I bet that you don't do consistently is to plan the conversation itself. And that means becoming very intentional beyond the agenda, but thinking about how we come across, how we want to use a conversation to build trust, and connect it to performance too, to your own KPIs, if you will. That's fine. You want to make sure that you don't waste time for yourself and for the other person in this upcoming conversation. That may be a one-on-one, that may be a peer conversation, that may be an important discussion with your boss. Very often we just don't do that. We just hurry from one meeting to another and expect everyone to be in sync, rushing through agendas, not taking proper notes or action items, and then wondering that things happen that we didn't expect. And what happens when we do that? We often assume negative intent. I told you so. That was what we discussed. In that meeting we discussed this. Why didn't you do that? And these are all signs when we hear that of a bad climate where a little bit of preparation goes a long way. So how do we prepare? Very often it just takes a few moments where you are free of distractions. And it might be just the slow walk from one meeting to another where you deliberately and intentionally press like a reset button in your mind. And I visualize it a bit like rebooting your Mac or your PC or your iPhone or your Android. It feels fresh, it feels new, and frankly, that's what your people deserve. If you're one of those people leaders who, for your own efficiency, schedule all your one-on-ones on one day, morning to afternoon, because you have 10 people and you just want to get it over with, and you want to be efficient, yes, you will be tired at 3 p.m. And that's an effect of your decision to do it this way. Yet, the person at 3 p.m. deserves that they get the feeling it's your first meeting of the day. Talk of fairness a little bit. So this is something I always try to make possible in my meetings. Or when I have conversations with my team members in the afternoon, I had some in the morning. It's not their fault how I schedule, because most of the time I'm inviting. I need to give them the feeling that this is a very important meeting. Because for them it is. Because most likely they have waited for this meeting. So making yourself think and wonder how you can reset yourself, that is really important. And what I do usually is to just take a few deep breaths. And that sounds like cliche, but doing this makes you calm down. And something which I often do is in workshops, I let people do a few moments of exercise. For example, some push-ups or something they like, so that your heart beats a bit. After just a very brief moment of exercise, touch your chest, touch your heart, and you will feel it beating. And in that moment, you use your breath with closed eyes to slow down and to normalize your heartbeat. It helps you to focus on something. Because for most of us, it's very difficult just to be mindful and to meditate, because our head is full of stuff. But if we have something to focus on while our eyes are closed, it helps. So this is something which I found very useful. So planning your conversation, why do I do this? Yeah, it makes a huge difference. When you come across as planned, your people will feel it. And it is the minimax. It is the minimum you need to do to have the maximum outcome. And this planning is so important because these meetings with your team members, they are very important to them, because don't forget, you are the most pivotal point of connection between your employee and the organization. You are important. Everything you do and say is being observed. So you come prepared to meetings, people will respect you more. You come in hurried in the meeting with your phone buzzing, with a demeanor of being completely stuck still in your last meeting, being emotional, and not acknowledging it, you will have a different impression. And it might be very justifiable in your mind. Because in your view, things were crazy just a moment ago. People have to understand that. But I have to tell you, no, they won't. People come to you with a fresh eye, with an open view. And they don't know what you just did or what you just experienced. So they deserve your fresh attention. And if you cannot deliver that as part of your planning, you might need to find a way to manage that better. Yeah, so that's before. And something which I do, maybe to close that point, is what I often do is to ask myself, what's really important? What needs to happen in this conversation to make it a good one? Then what needs to happen within the conversation? Very simple, bring your curiosity. And that's part of the coaching mindset. It's not cliche. I think in that moment when you prepare and you reset yourself, switch on your curiosity mindset. And what that does is it kicks off a self-reinforcing process, because it puts you in a mind of curiosity, genuine interest, and leads automatically to some certain things. Asking questions, showing interest, being more authentic, and also automatically you valuing the other person. And that's different. The mindset itself will drive how you behave. But something you shouldn't do, which I don't suggest, is simply to wonder yourself, I should ask more questions. But to what end? These might be just questions to confirm what you think is right. To ask knowledge-based questions that are feeling like teacher-student relationship? No. Just asking questions doesn't get you into a coaching impact. What you want to do is activate real curiosity in what's going on in the other person's head. And that automatically also activates empathy. But I find that the underlying theme of bringing curiosity into a meeting is really important. Sometimes it's tough to activate that. And if you can't, I would acknowledge that to myself and maybe to the other person and saying, look, today, I just need to share a few things you need to do, but knowing the impact versus coming into a meeting and saying, so we have this challenge, we have 10 minutes. I would love to pull our 2 best ideas each on the table and evaluate by the end of these 10 minutes, which are the most likely to succeed. And I would love to also get out of the last 10 minutes, I would like to understand from you how you think we could track it. That could be a start to show you are actually coming into a meeting without a preconceived idea what needs to happen. Yes, you set a frame because you're a leader, that's your job, but you leave space and you're actually curious. And that also means you listen to what was said and you're responding to what was said and you build questions based on what you heard. Because if you don't do it, if you're not interested and you use your continuous command and control style, you're complicit to a little crime here because you generate an environment where people just don't share. You teach them not to share because it's not the way things are being done here. It's a command and control environment. You take care of your people. You tell them what to do, and in return, you expect them to follow suit, execute your orders, but don't ask questions. That's an outdated way of engaging. Because what that means is we're leaving most of the ideas in the brains of the people, and we're completely reliant on the ideas of the leader who normally doesn't do the actual work. How would they know what's the best idea if they actually don't do it? And what can we do after? This is number 3. The very simple thing is just follow up and take note. And that really means that you have a system either in your head or like I do it, just afterwards take notes. What was said? What are the little maybe and should be that the person mentioned in front of you? So I always think of what are the 1 or 2 things that you want to reinforce, because what we said in number 2, what you bring into the conversation, curiosity. Real curiosity is shown when you are curious also after the conversation, which means like a day or 2 later when the team member comes into office in the morning, they put their jacket down and start their laptop, and you walk past them. Good morning. Hope you're doing well today on that slide deck. So I really look forward to discussing it tomorrow. Granted, that may sound threatening if you don't have a good relationship with your team member. On the other hand, if trust is there, it will show actually an act of sincerity and interest. Again, the tone makes the music here, and your body language plays a big role. But what I'm saying is, in that meeting, notice what was said. Not just the commitments that are big, but also small. The small things where people maybe didn't feel so well about. Because in the end, your team members also test you. And you also do that with your own bosses. You find out how invested are they really in what I'm doing. And trust me, if you feel your leader is invested and interested in what you do, it's one of the best motivators you can have. And the best thing is, it's virtually free. You can get a big motivation boost of your team members without spending any actually resources of the company, except a moment of your attention and time. So this is one of those things where coaching has a big return. Because when we notice, when we observe with curiosity, and we take note, and we follow up, in between the conversations that we have a huge impact. So, to summarize for today, I share with you 3 very simple, basic things that you as leader coaches can and should do to start coaching or to get into the mindset again for 2019. Number 1 was really just go and plan your conversations. Find a moment to become intentional. Don't just cruise into your conversations one by one and just wing it. That's not how you pull off your best. Because very likely you are someone who spends a lot of time optimizing on other areas of your business. Yet, what I see very often is that leaders don't optimize their conversations. They think they can just perform in conversations, but very often it's not the case. Many leaders find out very late in their careers that they've been successful and where they are, not necessarily because their conversation qualities, but despite of them. So don't be one person who neglects this aspect. Number 2, when you're in the conversation, activate your curiosity because it kicks off a reinforcing process. It brings you into a very different mindset, into more openness. It affects your body language, the type of things you will say and ask. It will influence the type of questions you ask because yes, there are bad questions. It's that simple. Yeah, there are good and there are bad questions. So I don't like that saying there are no bad questions. That's not true. There are bad questions. And the last one is be curious. And because you're curious, it means you will follow up. You will take note, mental note or physical note, of the small or big things that were agreed. You will do your part and the other person will do theirs, and you will help them. You will help them understand what's going on. So I think an example that came to mind for me was when 10, 12 years ago, when I had a very important leadership workshop coming up, a leadership training that lasted 5 days. And my boss at that time really was very enthusiastic, apparently, in a meeting of sharing it with me. And he said, Mike, you know a lot of these things already, but you will really benefit from it. So there's a lot of good things happening in this workshop. So all the best. So I went in there with high ambition, a lot of motivation. But what happened? In all our following one-on-ones, he never mentioned it once. He was absolutely not curious about what I experienced and how I could use and contribute it. The simple question that he could have asked me was, Mike, after your workshop, after your program, what are the ways how you will improve your own leadership based on what you heard? What are you going to do? That would have helped me so much, not just because of the content, but also because of the curiosity, the actual value that it brings. Now, granted, my boss was probably busy and he has a lot of things on his mind. I don't say it's negative intent here. I say his positive intent of focusing on what is very important to him and probably to the business had negative impact on me. It made me feel not valued, and very likely, still to this day, he doesn't know. So I wanted to give you a moment to reflect how you will use what you just heard in an upcoming conversation at work, with your team member, with a friend, with a peer. How can you plan your conversation? How can you activate curiosity? And how will you follow up? So I want to give you a moment. Take out your phone. Yes, right now, just take it. Stop hanging it close. Stop running for a moment on the treadmill. Stop doing the dishes. Stop walking. Stop what you're currently doing and just pause. Look at your calendar. Pick an upcoming meeting, and I will give you 30 seconds to let you think, how will you prepare for this particular meeting? So I hope you have some very clear idea now in your head. And with that, I really want to send you with warm wishes into a fantastic year 2019. Lots of exciting things are going to happen in your life. Definitely in mine too. You can expect a lot of things to come your way from IntelliCoach this year. I will share more in the future. All the best until then. Wish you a great time ahead. This is Mike from IntelliCoach.org. Bye.
You have been listening to the Coaching Leader Podcast, your resource to activate strengths and coaching skills in leaders. Head over to IntelliCoach.org to check out our blog and offers. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to this podcast and leave a 5-star review on iTunes. Thank you for tuning in.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for sticking around a little bit longer for an extended period. So we are in 2019, and I want to give a little bit of an update too. First, about the episode itself. I think very often we go too much into detail and we get complicated. It's very often that we forget the basics. So one thing I noticed is in workshops, we remember maybe 5, 10, 15% of learning experience in the long run. That's not much. But these 5, 10, 15% tend to be the most important and long-lasting. And my focus is on, re-emphasizing and also kind of repeating these things that are really important. these three things that I mentioned here, the preparation, the curiosity, and the follow-up are so central. If you look at the 20% of coaching that makes 80% of the difference, and if you look in those 20%, and if you recursively apply the same thing again, within those 20%, you look for the 20% of those 20% that are the most important, these would probably be part of it. Do these right, and you're going a long distance. So you'll be probably bored very soon because I will mention this a lot. Because it's so central. It's easy to forget. Simply easy to forget like breathing well or meditating. It simply doesn't come to mind for us, yet it's so basic and so useful. How have I been progressing in terms of my own goals over the last 2 weeks? No, I was too ambitious over the holiday period. I can tell you that. And I think it's called planning fallacy. That's our ability or inability, put it this way, to project our ability to complete tasks in the future. I am definitely guilty of that. I always overestimate what I can do in a given time. So what my planning was is to spend a lot of time on the ebook and getting the webpage ready. I've got my webpage ready to some degree. I'm sort of at peace with the current very plain surface that I created. But the one thing that really worked over the last 2 weeks, despite all the family things that were going around, Christmas period, kids, was I dove into video production. And it's something I wanted to learn for a long time. And I've been using this as an opportunity to, delve into some of my strengths here. And I combine my individualization. So Strength Finder gurus will know that. My individualizations, which means I derive a lot of pleasure in going deep with individual people and serving individuals well. And my, joy with handling technology. So what I've been doing is to create customized video greetings for a lot of my customers, friends, family members. And wow, that led me really into a rabbit hole. I can't believe it. So I learned video production at the same time, which served my learner theme from Strength Finder. I love to learn new things and new techniques. And I perfected a little bit of a video workflow around that. I plan to send maybe 10, 15 video greetings. What I ended up is I sent about 80. Oh my God. And in the beginning, the first video message to create took me about an hour or two because everything's new, of course. Now I've got it down to 10 minutes, and that's a little bit of a production workflow. I'm doing this with Camtasia, which is a good tool, but it has its flaws. There's frustrating limitations to making things scalable and adjustable. But I'm quite happy with the outcome, and it fulfills some of the core things that I believe in. I don't like holiday messages that are canned emails. I just don't like it. I just don't want to send them. When I receive a holiday message on WhatsApp or over email that just says Happy New Year, it just feels that it was just copy and pasted. There's no personal touch in it. So what's the use of it? I don't appreciate it at all. So what I wanted to do differently is to give people a very personal note and also at the same time introduce IntelliCoach. That's something I did. And if you want to see an example for one of those greetings, I created one specifically for you, for my podcast listeners. And you can find that at IntelliCoach.org/2019. So that's very easy, just a number, IntelliCoach.org/2019. And that's a message just for you.